transits. We're talking about the full moon in Aries. This is happening right now, depending on where you are in the world. September 29th on my end of the world. And it is the gate of 17. Which is the gate and quantum human design of activation. I love this because I feel like there's been a lot of activation lately, and I think it is in a weird ways culminating this week, uh, even in energetic downloads. So for those who have a tendency to pick up things intuitively and even all at once, I think of that as a download. And I have had a few. And then the incorporation, integration of things that I've already understood, that I've all the things that have changed this year. So I feel like activation is a really good word for it because in some way, shape, or form, the combination of experiences is activating you into more possibility. And that is what's up this week. That's what's going on. So yes, Aries, early degrees. So it feels a lot like the beginning of inspiration, that beginningness of what is individualized to us, inspired individualized to us, but it's inspiring that we have experienced, right? So it is in the gate is from the ajna to the throat center. And so having that understanding to me means that it looks like having inspiration and then being able to act or speak about it. And so in quantum human design, they have kind of a precaution about speaking before it's time, that you may have an enlightenment or a knowingness that comes in that maybe before it's time, right? And so being cognizant of the right timing of responding when it is when it's appropriate to share and have other people be availed of that light, I think is a sense that we grow into. It's a maturity that happens for a lot of empathic people who receive messages, right? And if it's the right time, if it's the right person you're talking to, when it's the right time to speak on these things. It's one of the reasons why I think my people are so desperate for to build their own platforms, to build their own visibility. I say desperate, but it's really just a knowingness that we have to speak when people in our vicinity may not be ready. So we have to put it on a larger platform so the people that are ready are still getting the information. And so that's usually what happens when people are inspired to do things that are so crazy, like talk about metaphysics and transformation on social media, right? Because that now we're making these huge leaps of understanding and inspiration through these like little bite-sized videos and audios. And it's a work, and it's something that we have to learn what is the right way for us to do it with our energy, how that wants to show up in those platforms, and then also how are we still providing the sustenance, how are we still providing our service regardless of the possible limitations of the platform. So this is the amino acid arginine, the ring of humanity. And things that I want us to remember about this full moon and how it's going to impact us as we move forward. So because I'm doing these pretty much on the day right now, I want you to think of it as how that energy is moving from then forward. So it's been building up so we can realize the understanding of the possibility, the largeness of inspiration, of the totality of the possibility, availability of expansion. And then as we move to the next new moon, right, then it's going to start kind of withdrawing, releasing. That's the work that we're doing. What are we releasing? What are the old understandings of ourselves? What are the old limitations that are no longer applying? How are we releasing those ideas to make space for what's new on the next new moon? I think it's good to be able to have a sense of how you are thinking about these things, because cycles have a tendency to bleed into each other and their meanings, and you might hear different versions of what it means for it to be full moon, what it means to be new moon. but it's often coming from these perspectives. It depends on what perspective you're looking from. Are you looking from the perspective of moving into the new moon? You're looking for the perspective of the exact present energy of the full moon? Or are you looking from the perspective of what is happening as we move forward or onward after the large event, right? And so it really depends. It depends on what our perspectives are, what we think is most useful for us, where we notice ourselves tuning in and understanding the work. So for me, I usually am tuning into that experience very early, and so it often is kind of what have I already realized, what have I already needed to work through with my clients, and what what's next for them. So that is one of the things that I have had to learn about sharing this information. What are the other things? What is up for you? Unleashing imagination, I think, is something that I pick up from Quantum Human Design from Karen Curry Parker, that is really powerful. This understanding that imagination is the idea itself, and that we don't need to restrict the idea and like lock it down and make it solid and logical. That is not what we're doing in this new energy of Aries. We are just allowing it to even live, right? Just to live long enough for things to be attracted to it or not, for things to fall away so it can thrive, right? So I think of it a lot as growing. And if it's in the space where there's a lot of other stuff that you kind of have to take out the weeds first, that's not releasing. That's going to happen as we move into new moon. Another thing I want you to take away from this, as far as like personal work, what does it mean to you, and why, where you may be in your work, in your vision, in your business and life path. These are things I want to look at. What it would look like if you stop trying to make it make sense and just let the idea live and thrive until it picks up its own momentum or falling away for another idea. Letting that be a natural process instead of I have to pick the right one and being restrictive and overly logical about it. That's what's up for us there. Inspiration over opinion. So this is something that's more coming from Gene Keys, because it's the shadow of opinion. It is, look, let me see, I have to find it. So the shadow of opinion, I know I wrote this down. Where is it? Oh yeah, the gift of farsightedness, and then the city of omniscience. So this is good. So basically, we're talking about, inspiration over opinion. So inspiration is basically just what comes in when we're open, available, in love, and heightened vibration. And opinion happens when we are unsatisfied and think there must be a reason why we're unsatisfied. So it's already starting in this shadow, and the programming partner, the shadow of the 18 as the programming partner, is judgment. Okay, so it's this aspect of trying to logically figure out why something is wrong. So what is something to shift about that? What is a way to shift? So for 3 of my clients this week, this has come up in these ways of which they, in order for them to shift, they had to acknowledge that they were trying to keep out the part that was unwelcome, unsatisfying, in order to achieve the part that they wanted. And so when you do that, you create division and separation. It creates the reason why this is better than this, and why I'm righter than you are, and why I deserve the attention and you don't, right? And there's more than one situation. There's 3 different situations, but it boiled down to this concept. Instead of like the unsatisfaction breeding the logic left side of our brain to create more opinions, more separation, more comparison, more division between 2 parties. What shifts when you're able to see the perspective of both people, right? And so that means who you are being and who the other person's being, right? In the present moment, if that's what we're applying it to, which is what we were during the session. So, and then how do we shift that? How do we shift our our relationship with that, so we can communicate in the highest light, good, and with the intention of whatever our objective is in that conversation. So in that, we're embracing what we are trying to get rid of. Okay. So what does that look like? Fear. If you're trying to get rid of the feeling of fear, of being afraid something will or will not happen, then we have to decide, well, actually, I'm gonna embrace the fact that I'm scared. I understand that I'm scared. And I also know that energy is something that I can shift and transmute if I embrace it, right? With that understanding, am I willing to embrace both sides of the argument in order to see the full far side and to see past, right, what it seems to be obvious right now, what seems to be clear, a better opinion than your opinion. Okay. And I'm sure it depends. It depends on what opinions are being presented and represented. But that is part of that work. And then if it's sadness, it's the same thing. Are we trying to divide ourselves, separate ourselves out from that sadness so that we can say, well, I'm not sad. I'm actually very high vibe right now. I don't need to be sad, right? When we are feeling levels of sadness and we separate ourselves from them, or don't feel seen, heard, understood, we have to incorporate that in order for us to realize, oh, I'm sad, but I also have a lot to look forward to. Then we can live with both understandings. It exponentializes ourselves into the higher possibility of what you can imagine can change. So, and that's also been something that has been on the table. And then also in how are we self-expressing? How are we self-expressing? Are we expressing so that we can prove a perfection, right, of ourselves and an aspect of how we're trying to be perceived? Or are we expressing with the inclusion of what we may be ashamed of, right? So that doesn't mean that you have to talk about it, but you have to acknowledge it and not separate yourself out from it, because people will perceive it just by it taking up space, whether that's within your conversation or within your energy field. So anyways, but that's some of the stuff that has come up for my clients this week. So I like to share when I can. And this is the opportunity to do that. And so, how are you doing this in your content? How are you applying this to your content? What patterns are your clients using? So, what is the logic that your clients have about why they can't change what you are specializing in changing, right? What do you change? What do you add? What do you allow for in their lives, right? What is the story they usually have before they've done that work with you? And then what is the truth? So what is the farsightedness? What do they not know about that yet? Right? What wisdom can you bring? What experience and stories do you have that allows them to see past what they think is true and all they know about themselves, right? And so that I think is the really big takeaway here for content. It's about really recognizing the stories, the patterns of your clients, that it's when they're ready, when do they start realizing that they're in a pattern, that they that if that's a pattern, they may be able to break out of it. What does that look like for them on their timelines, right? So for me, it's usually people who have thought they were introverted all their life, that they don't have an exciting personality, maybe, that they'll never be popular, they're never going to be the popular kid. So they just buy into being the underdog, that they'll never be seen, they'll never be heard fully. And then they ascribe that to everything, whether they know it or not. That's the way we do one thing, it's the way we do everything, right? So when they are trying to be visible, there's still this underlying subconscious idea that nobody's going to get it. And so we try to mask that in the fear of never being seen. We try to mask that in professionalism. of just showing up in levels of perfection that we witness from others, how other people have looked perfect to us. We try to be that instead of our own versions of maybe messy imperfection, right? It doesn't always have to be perfect to serve well. And that's something I think that we in our community, in my community anyways, are still realizing and allowing for ourselves to be true. And so that I think is something I really want y'all to walk away on. The other part of this um, is that the trap of logic, okay? Because we can essentially, and we've seen this, we've seen people use the same statistics to prove both sides of an argument. We've seen the same logic be convincing for one thing to separate or divide themselves in the higher opinion than another thing, but that other thing can use the same logic to convince you of that thesis or that belief, right? So it is really not about proving your opinion, what opinion or or perspective is more right. Okay, this is about how much can we expand to include all possibilities, so the one that is of the most alignment is still available to us when the rubber meets the road. And that's kind of what my people are realizing, is that there's a potential for a higher level of impact in the way they present themselves, in the way that they speak and talk about what they do and their vision, and that they're close, and they're like, but they're not sure how they do it yet. And that's what I get to walk with them into, is this: how do I do impact? How do I do um, brand? How do I do visibility? How does that look like for me in the highest level and precision of impact that I desire, and not just the formulaic stuff that other people have done before, but in the way that makes sense for you and your work and your life, right? So that's a little bit of a takeaway. How does that look for you and your work? What is it? What are people recognizing that, oh, they may have bought into something that's not necessarily true? What are the indicators, right, that have said that, oh yeah, they there may be another a possibility for them? And then how do you help them see your side? How do you help them see your version, what you have actually witnessed, experienced, and what is the truth of that experience? How are you sharing that? Okay. I feel like this is a pretty deep one, because it is a pretty deep week. Like, activation is no joke. It's this ability to take the duality that we're experiencing and see beyond that. When we can see beyond the duality, which is the reality of this life and space and time, we can see beyond that. We witness our true selves, our spirit, the beyond the reality, the far-sightedness, the omniscience of seeing all the parts and their play and the way they are evolving and relating to each other in their own versions of perfection at their own frequencies, and that it's all perfect in that way. Um, that's a pretty high concept. And so relating it to the 3D can sometimes be a leap. It can be a leap, but that's the work we're in. Most of the people that I work with and partner with and that work with me are people that are bridging these gaps of understanding of duality into what is next, which is our true selves expansion, and the connection and community that allows us to be in our senses of alignment and perfection. So more of that, and more of that is the work. And so, yeah, if you want to do more of that work with me, always feel free to contact me. Or if you have a question and you want an answer, a good place to put it is in the comments, so that I can either answer it on the next video, or we can have a conversation about it in the comments. So I will see you on the next one. Happy full moon in Aries. Thank you so much for coming by. I appreciate you being here. And if I don't see you in chat on YouTube, then I'd love to see you at one of my events. Check my links in the comments.